The notification came at 3:47 a.m. Marcus is now following your Spotify playlist Late Night Thoughts. I stared at my phone screen, rain pattering against my bedroom window. I made that playlist exactly 12 minutes ago. I hadn't shared it with anyone. Marcus had been my closest friend since college, the kind of person who remembered your coffee order and always texted back immediately. But lately, something felt different. Wrong. Like he was standing too close, listening too carefully, watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I deleted the notification and tried to sleep, but questions gnawed at me. How had he found a private playlist so quickly? How did he always know exactly what I was doing? The next morning brought another unsettling discovery. My Instagram story from the previous evening, a photo of my dinner at Romano's, had a comment from Marcus. Looks amazing! I had the same thing. But Romano's was 20 minutes from his apartment, and he posted his own dinner photo from a completely different restaurant at the same time. I called him. Hey, did you go to Romano's last night? Romano's? No, why would you think that? His voice carried that slightly hurt tone he used when he felt accused of something. You commented that you had the same meal. A pause. Too long. Oh, that? I meant I've had their chicken parmesan before. It's really good, right? But I'd ordered the salmon. Over the next few days, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Marcus knew things he shouldn't know. He'd reference conversations I'd had with other people, mention places I'd been without telling him, even quote things I'd said during phone calls with my sister. When I confronted him about it, he always had reasonable explanations. Mutual friends had mentioned things. He'd seen my location on Snapchat. Pure coincidence. The explanations were getting thinner. I decided to test him. On Thursday, I told him I was going to the gym, but instead drove to a coffee shop across town, somewhere I'd never been, somewhere we'd never discussed. I turned off location services, didn't post on social media, paid with cash. 30 minutes later, as I sat reading in a corner booth, the door chimed. Marcus walked in. Our eyes met across the crowded cafe, and for a split second, his face showed something I'd never seen before. Not surprise. Not embarrassment. Something calculating. Cold. Then his expression shifted to delight. Sarah! What are the chances? I was just in the neighborhood for work. But Marcus worked in IT from home. He hadn't left his apartment for a job in 3 years. I smiled and played along, but my hands were shaking. What a coincidence. He sat down uninvited, ordered my exact drink, a lavender oat milk latte I'd never ordered in his presence, and started talking about his day. Normal conversation, normal Marcus, except for the way he kept glancing at my phone, my purse, my car keys. Like he was memorizing them. That night I called my sister from my apartment. I think Marcus is following me. Come on, Sarah. It's Marcus. He's been your friend for 6 years. Something's wrong, Emma. He knows things he shouldn't know. Maybe you're overthinking. A sound from my kitchen cut her off. Like a footstep. I lived alone on the 3rd floor of a secure building. Emma, I need to go. I hung up and grabbed a knife from the block by my stove, creeping toward the sound. Nothing. Empty kitchen, locked windows, deadbolt door. But my laptop was open on the counter. I always closed it, and the screen showed my email inbox. There were 3 new emails in my sent folder. Messages I hadn't written, sent to Marcus from my account. Thanks for today. So glad we ran into each other. I've been thinking about what you said about taking that pottery class together. You're such a good friend. I don't know what I'd do without you. I'd never written those words. I'd never even thought them. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Got your emails. So sweet of you. Want to grab dinner tomorrow? I stared at the messages until the words blurred. Then I started searching. Really searching. What I discovered next made me question everything I thought I knew about our friendship. Marcus wasn't just following me physically. He'd been living my life digitally for months, maybe years. My cloud storage account showed login attempts from his IP address. My social media had been accessed from devices I didn't recognize. Apps I'd never downloaded were requesting permissions on my phone. I found screenshots he'd taken of my private messages, photos of me sleeping that I'd never posed for, detailed notes about my daily routines typed in a document titled Sarah Behavioral Patterns. He'd been tracking my menstrual cycle, my work schedule, even my Netflix viewing habits. But the worst discovery was the folder labeled Sarah 2.0. It contained purchase confirmations for clothes identical to mine, screenshots of apartments that looked exactly like my layout, and applications for jobs at companies where I'd applied. He wasn't just watching my life, he was replicating it. Creating a parallel existence where he could be me, or be with me, or replace me entirely. The photos at the bottom of the folder made my stomach lurch. Pictures of me through my bedroom window, taken with a telephoto lens. Me at work, me at the grocery store, me on dates with other people. In every photo, I was unaware I was being watched. The timestamps went back 2 years. I realized I was holding my breath and forced myself to inhale. Then I saw the most recent addition to the folder, a real estate listing for the apartment directly across from mine. The one with a perfect view of my bedroom. According to the application attached, Marcus was moving in next week. My phone rang. Marcus. I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail. Hey, I have some exciting news to share. Want to come over tonight? I'm making your favorite dinner. I know exactly how you like it. How could he know my favorite dinner when I'd never told him? How did he know how I liked anything? I packed a bag with shaking hands and drove to Emma's house. She took one look at me and knew something was catastrophically wrong. He's been living in my phone. I whispered, showing her the evidence. Emma, he knows everything about me. Things I've never told anyone. We changed all my passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, and filed a police report. The officer was sympathetic but explained that most of what Marcus had done existed in legal gray areas. Unless he made direct threats or broke into my apartment, there wasn't much they could do. But he's stalking me, I said. Technically, he's accessing accounts you may have given him permission to use at some point, and being in public places where you happen to be isn't illegal. That night, staying at Emma's, I got 17 missed calls from Marcus. The voicemails started concerned, then confused, then angry. Sarah, where are you? I made dinner. Why aren't you answering? Did I do something wrong? I saw your car at Emma's. This is ridiculous. I'm your best friend. You can't just disappear from my life. We're connected, Sarah. We belong together. The final message was different. Calmer. I understand you need space. I'll give you time to realize what we have. But you can't run from this forever. I know you better than you know yourself. The truth behind those last words was so much worse than I could have imagined. Emma and I spent the next day researching Marcus's background. What we found made my blood freeze. His previous best friends, from college, from high school, even from childhood, all had restraining orders against him. 3 had moved states away. 1 had changed her name entirely. There was a pattern. Marcus would attach himself to someone, usually a woman, and slowly infiltrate every aspect of their life. He'd learn their routines, their passwords, their fears. He'd isolate them from other friends by creating conflicts, spreading rumors, making himself indispensable. Then he'd escalate. The police reports painted a picture of a man who believed his targets belonged to him. That their lives were shared property. That privacy was selfish and boundaries were betrayal. I'd been his target for 6 years, and I'd never noticed because he was so good at being exactly what I needed him to be. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. New phone. It's Marcus. We need to talk. Then another. I'm outside Emma's house. Emma called 911 while I peered through the blinds. Marcus's car sat across the street, engine running. He wasn't trying to hide anymore. When the police arrived, he was gone. But taped to Emma's mailbox was a manila envelope with my name on it. Inside were printouts of every text message I'd sent for the past 2 years, photos from my cloud storage, and copies of my medical records. At the bottom was a single sheet of paper with one typed line. "You can't delete me from your life like a playlist, Sarah. What happened in those next few moments will stay with me forever." The police took the evidence, but Marcus had vanished. His apartment was empty, cleaned out completely. His phone was disconnected. Even his job had no forwarding information. Apparently, he'd been working under a fake identity for months. I changed my name, moved across the country, rebuilt my entire digital presence from scratch. For 6 months, I thought I was free. Then I got a notification on my new Spotify account. "Marcus is now following your playlist starting over." I'd created it 10 minutes ago. The username was different, but I recognized the profile picture, a photo of me I'd never shared, taken through a window I'd thought was secure. He's still out there, still watching, still becoming whoever he needs to be to get close to me. And the most terrifying part isn't that he found me again. It's that I'm starting to miss having someone who knew me so completely. "I threw away your cigarettes," Jenna said, standing in my kitchen like she belonged there. "They were hidden behind the cereal." "Really, David? We talked about this." I stared at her, keys still in my hand from walking through my own front door. "How did you get in here?" "Spare key from under your planter. Someone could break in, it's not safe." She held up my emergency key, then pocketed it. "I made you dinner. Grilled chicken, steamed broccoli. You need protein and vegetables." The smell hit me then. My apartment reeked of cooking, but underneath it was something else. Something chemical and sharp that made my nose burn. "Jenna, you can't just..." "Can't what?" "Care about you." Her voice carried that edge it got when she felt unappreciated. "When's the last time you had a real meal? When's the last time anyone else made sure you were eating right?" She wasn't wrong. Since my divorce 6 months ago, I'd been living on takeout and whatever required minimal effort. Jenna had stepped in to help, bringing groceries, checking on me, making sure I wasn't completely falling apart. But this felt different. Invasive. "I appreciate it, but you can't just come into my place when I'm not here." "Of course I can. We're friends." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Best friends help each other. Now sit down and eat." The chicken was perfectly seasoned, the broccoli cooked exactly how I liked it. But every bite tasted wrong, like it had been sitting too long or prepared with unwashed hands. I pushed the food around my plate while Jenna watched. "You're not eating." "I'm tired. Long day at work." "That job is killing you, David. 60-hour weeks, all that stress." "Have you thought about my suggestion?" Her suggestion was that I quit my marketing position and take a part-time job closer to home. Something less demanding. Something that would give me more time for what really matters. I can't just quit. I have a mortgage, car payments. Money isn't everything. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her palm was damp with sweat. "Health is more important. Happiness is more important. I worry about you." That night, after she left, I found things missing from my apartment. My bottle of scotch. The leftover pizza in my fridge. My laptop charger. When I texted her about it, she called immediately. "I'm helping you make better choices," she said. "The alcohol was making you depressed, the pizza was garbage, and you spend too much time online. You'll thank me later." "Jenna, you can't just take my things." "I can when they're bad for you. That's what friends do." I started locking my door from the inside when I was home, but somehow she kept getting in. She'd replaced my spare key, or found another way, or maybe she'd made copies I didn't know about. I'd come home from work to find her cleaning my bathroom, organizing my closet, throwing away things she deemed unhealthy or negative. My fantasy novels disappeared because they were escapist. My comfortable old t-shirts vanished, replaced with button-downs she'd bought me because they were More professional. Even my coffee was replaced with herbal tea that tasted like grass and disappointment. You look better already, she said one evening, sitting on my couch like she lived there. Cleaner. More focused. Don't you feel better? I felt violated. Controlled. Like I was slowly disappearing from my own life. But when I tried to talk to other people about it, they didn't understand. My coworker Mike laughed when I mentioned it during lunch. Dude, you've got a hot friend who cleans your place and cooks for you? What's the problem? My sister was more concerned but ultimately dismissive. She's probably just trying to help. You have been kind of a mess since the divorce. Even my therapist, Dr. Rodriguez, seemed to think Jenna's behavior was well-intentioned if overly involved. It sounds like she cares about you. Maybe you could set some boundaries? I tried. I changed my locks, but she somehow got the new key. I told her I needed space, and she showed up with groceries because she was worried I wasn't eating. I blocked her number, and she called from different phones, always with some urgent reason she needed to check on me. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. I'd had a particularly bad day at work. A client meeting had gone poorly, and I'd gotten chewed out by my boss. All I wanted was to order a pizza, have a beer, and watch something mindless on Netflix. Instead, I came home to find Jenna in my living room with two other people I'd never seen before. David, these are my friends from the Wellness Center. Karen and Rob. They want to talk to you about some opportunities. Karen was thin and intense, with the kind of smile that never moved. Rob looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. They both watched me with an attention that made my skin crawl. We've heard so much about you, Karen said. Jenna says you're ready for a real change. Change? A better way of living, Rob added. Natural. Pure. Away from all the toxins and negative influences of modern life. They started talking about a community they were part of. A place where people could focus on health and spiritual growth without the distractions of contemporary society. No processed food, no technology, no stressful jobs. Just clean living and supportive friends who wanted what was best for each other. It sounds like a cult, I said. The room went quiet. Jenna's face hardened. It's not a cult, David. It's a family. People who actually care about each other enough to make hard choices. I think you should leave. We're not leaving until you listen, Karen said, and something in her voice made my blood freeze. Jenna has worked very hard to prepare you for this conversation. Prepare me? That's when I noticed the smell again. That chemical scent I'd been detecting in my apartment for weeks. Not cleaning products or air freshener. Something else. Something that had been in my food. What I discovered next made me question everything I thought I knew about my recovery from divorce. The room started tilting slightly, and my thoughts felt sluggish. I tried to stand, but my legs weren't responding properly. The herbal tea, I said, the words coming out thick and slow. Just mild sedatives, Jenna said gently. To help with your anxiety. You've been so stressed, David. So resistant to getting better. You've been drugging me. I've been helping you relax so you could think clearly. All those chemicals in your system, alcohol, caffeine, processed food additives, they were clouding your judgment. I fumbled for my phone, but Rob was already taking it from my pocket. My movements were clumsy, uncoordinated. The beautiful thing about the center, Karen continued, is that once you're there, all these difficult decisions get made for you. What to eat, when to sleep, who to spend time with. It's incredibly freeing. People think they want choice, Rob added, but choice is actually a burden. When someone who truly loves you makes your choices, you can focus on becoming your best self. I tried to call out, but my voice was barely a whisper. The sedatives were stronger now, pulling me down into a gray fog where thinking required enormous effort. I've been weaning you off your old life gradually, Jenna explained, stroking my hair like I was a child. Getting rid of the things that were holding you back. The job stress, the unhealthy food, the negative thought patterns. Soon you won't miss any of it. My job, I managed to say. I called in sick for you today. And yesterday. I've been answering your emails, telling people you're dealing with a family emergency. In a few days, I'll submit your resignation. You'll be free. The truth behind her months of help was so much worse than I could have imagined. She hadn't been saving me from my post-divorce depression. She'd been systematically dismantling my life, isolating me from friends and family, making me dependent on her care while slowly poisoning me with substances that made me compliant and confused. My weight loss wasn't from better eating, it was from controlled portions and appetite suppressants. My improved focus was from stimulants that made me paranoid and dependent. My increased clarity was from isolation that had cut me off from anyone who might question what was happening. "The van is outside," Karen said. "We'll take you somewhere you can rest while the last of those toxins work out of your system." I tried to fight, but my body felt like it belonged to someone else. They lifted me easily, my limbs heavy and unresponsive. "This is kidnapping," I slurred. "This is rescue," Jenna corrected. "You'll understand when you're better. When you see how much happier you can be when someone who truly loves you is making decisions for your own good." The final piece of the puzzle changed everything, and there was no going back. As they carried me toward the door, I saw my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked exactly like Rob, gaunt, hollow-eyed, with the expression of someone who had given up fighting long ago. In that moment, I understood that this wasn't Jenna's first time helping someone. The wellness center wasn't just a community. It was a collection center for people who had been systematically broken down and rebuilt in someone else's image of perfection. "How many others?" I whispered. Jenna smiled, the expression finally reaching her eyes. "You'll meet them all soon. They're excited to welcome you to the family." The van door slammed shut, and through the small window, I watched my apartment building disappear into the darkness. Inside my pocket, I felt something small and hard, my spare house key, the one Jenna had taken months ago. Except it wasn't my key at all. It was plastic, painted to look like metal. A prop to make me believe she'd taken something from me, when in reality, she'd had access to my home from the very beginning. What happened in those next few moments will stay with me forever. As we drove through empty streets toward whatever facility they'd prepared for me, I realized that every choice I'd made for the past 6 months hadn't been my choice at all. Every meal, every thought, every moment of clarity or confusion had been carefully orchestrated. The divorce that had started my depression? Jenna had been the one who told me about my ex-wife's affair, provided the evidence, encouraged me to hire the lawyer who ensured I'd lose everything. She'd created the problem and then positioned herself as the solution. The van pulled into a gated compound surrounded by tall fences. Through the fog of sedatives, I could see other buildings, other people moving slowly between them like sleepwalkers. "Welcome home," Jenna whispered as they carried me toward the entrance. But I wasn't David anymore. I was just another person who needed to be saved from themselves, another project for someone who knew what was best. The gate closes behind us, and I realize the rain sounds just like footsteps. "You looked tired in your Instagram story last night," Maya said, sliding into the coffee shop booth across from me. "The one where you were reading in bed around midnight." I froze with my latte halfway to my lips. "I didn't post any Instagram story last night." "Sure you did. You were wearing that gray tank top, reading that thriller novel." She pulled out her phone, fingers moving quickly across the screen. "See? Right here." The screen was blank. No story visible. "There's nothing there, Maya." She frowned, tilting her phone away from me. "Weird. Maybe it expired already. Instagram stories only last 24 hours, you know." But I knew I hadn't posted anything. I'd been home alone, reading until I fell asleep with the book on my chest. No photos, no social media, just me in silence. "Must have been someone else," I said carefully. "No, it was definitely you. Same bedsheets, same lamp, same everything." Maya's smile was bright and innocent. "I always watch your stories." I like seeing what you're up to. A chill crawled up my spine, but I pushed it away. Maya had been my friend since high school. She was sometimes a little too invested in other people's lives, but she meant well. She'd always been the type to remember every detail about everyone, to notice things others missed. Still, something felt wrong. Over the next few days, Maya kept mentioning things I hadn't shared with anyone. She knew I'd ordered Thai food Tuesday night, that I'd stayed late at work Wednesday, that I'd talked to my mom Thursday morning. When I asked how she knew, she always had explanations that almost made sense. I saw the Thai Palace bag in your car when I drove past the office. Your lights were still on when I jogged by your street. Your mom posted on Facebook about your call. Logical. Reasonable. But the explanations felt rehearsed, like she'd prepared them in advance. Friday evening, I decided to test her. I told Maya I was going to a movie with my coworker Sarah. Instead, I drove to Barnes & Noble across town, bought a book, and sat in the cafe reading for 2 hours. I turned off my location services, didn't post anything online, paid with cash. Saturday morning, Maya texted, "How was the bookstore? Did you buy anything good?" My blood turned cold. I called her immediately. "What bookstore?" "Oh, did I say bookstore? I meant movie. How was the movie?" "Maya, you said bookstore." A pause. "I don't think I did, Jess. Maybe you misheard me." But I had screenshots. I always screenshot things that make me uncomfortable, a habit I developed after my ex-boyfriend tried to gaslight me about his cheating. Maya had definitely written, "bookstore." When I sent her the screenshot, she called me back within seconds. "That's so weird," she said, voice tight with fake confusion. "My phone must have auto-corrected. You know how glitchy these things get." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying conversations, trying to figure out how Maya knew things she shouldn't know. Finally, around 2 a.m., I got up and searched my apartment. I found the first camera behind my bathroom mirror, a tiny lens barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look. The second was in a fake smoke detector in my bedroom. The third was hidden in the base of a lamp Maya had given me for my birthday 6 months ago. My hands shook as I dismantled the devices. They were sophisticated, wireless, the kind you need technical knowledge to install properly. Maya worked in IT support. Maya who'd helped me set up my new Wi-Fi when I moved in. Maya who'd been alone in my apartment dozens of times over the past year. I wanted to confront her immediately, but something held me back. If she'd gone to this much trouble to spy on me, what would she do if she knew I'd discovered it? Instead, I decided to investigate. What I discovered next made me question everything I thought I knew about our friendship. Maya's social media accounts were carefully curated to seem normal, but when I dug deeper, I found the inconsistencies. Photos of places she claimed to visit but never seemed to leave town for. Check-ins at restaurants during times I knew she was elsewhere. It was like she was living 2 lives, one for public consumption and another in the shadows. I created a fake Facebook profile and searched for her name. What I found made my stomach drop. There were accounts dedicated to me. Dozens of them. Photos of me that I'd never seen before, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Me grocery shopping, me walking to my car, me through my office window. The timestamps went back 2 years. The captions were what really terrified me. Maya had been documenting my life like a research project, noting my routines, my habits, my emotional states. She'd recorded things I'd said during private phone calls, described arguments I'd had with my family, even documented my menstrual cycle based on observed behavioral changes. One album was titled, Jess's Love Life. It contained photos of every man I'd dated or even talked to casually. Under each photo were detailed notes about their backgrounds, their schedules, their social media activity. Several men had, eliminated, written across their pictures in red text. I remembered how those relationships had ended. Always the same way, the men would suddenly become distant, claiming they'd heard things about me that made them uncomfortable. Maya had always been there to comfort me afterward, telling me I was better off without them. I scrolled through more albums, each one more disturbing than the last. Photos of my family members, my coworkers, my neighbors. Maya had been building a comprehensive map of my entire life, documenting everyone I cared about, everyone who mattered to me. The most recent album was titled Preparation Phase. It contained floor plans of my apartment, screenshots of my bank statements, copies of my work schedule, and photos of keys I'd never seen before. At the bottom was a single document labeled Timeline. The timeline outlined a plan spanning the next 6 months. Maya intended to gradually isolate me from friends and family, sabotage my job performance, and create a series of emergencies that would force me to depend on her increasingly. The final entry, dated 6 months from now, simply read: Relocation complete. New phase begins. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Hey! Want to grab dinner tonight? I have something exciting to tell you. I stared at the message, understanding now that every invitation, every casual encounter, every moment of our friendship had been calculated. Maya hadn't been my friend for 10 years. She'd been studying me, preparing for something I couldn't even comprehend. But the worst realization was still coming. I scrolled to the bottom of her fake Facebook profile and found a section labeled Previous Projects. There were links to other profiles, other women who'd been documented just as thoroughly as I had been. Sarah Chin. Documented for 3 years, then nothing. Her last post was about moving to Portland for a fresh start. Jennifer Walsh. 2 years of surveillance, then radio silence. Her final social media activity was a goodbye post about finding herself and going off-grid. Melissa Torres. 18 months of documentation ending with a memorial post from her family. She'd died in a car accident on a remote highway, but something about the circumstances seemed off. The truth behind Maya's friendship was so much worse than I could have imagined. She wasn't just spying on me. I was part of a pattern, a cycle that had been repeating for years. Maya would choose a target, study them obsessively, isolate them systematically, and then, what? Where were Sarah and Jennifer now? Were they really living new lives, or had something happened to them? I tried calling Sarah's old number, but it was disconnected. Jennifer's social media accounts had been deleted. Melissa was dead. I was alone with this knowledge, and Maya was expecting me for dinner. My phone rang. Maya. Hey, where are you? I've been waiting at Romano's for 20 minutes. But I'd never agreed to meet her at Romano's. I'd never agreed to dinner at all. I'll be right there, I lied, grabbing my keys and heading for the door. Instead of driving to the restaurant, I went straight to the police station. The officer at the desk listened to my story with growing concern, but when I tried to show him the fake Facebook profiles, they were gone. Deleted. As if they'd never existed. Do you have any physical evidence? He asked. The cameras. I'd hidden them in my car, wrapped in a towel in my trunk. But when I retrieved the bundle, it was empty except for torn wires and plastic fragments. Maya had been in my apartment again. I'm sorry, miss, but without evidence, there's not much we can do. Have you considered that you might be experiencing some stress? Maybe talking to someone professionally? The final piece of the puzzle changed everything, and there was no going back. As I drove home from the police station, I realized Maya had been 2 steps ahead of me the entire time. She'd known I would eventually discover the cameras. She'd planned for it. The fake Facebook profiles had been bait, designed to make me react predictably, to send me running to authorities who would dismiss me as paranoid. But she'd made one mistake. When I'd screenshotted her text about the bookstore, I'd also backed it up to cloud storage she didn't know about. It wasn't much, but it was something. Proof that she knew things she shouldn't know. I pulled into my driveway and saw her car parked across the street. She was sitting in the driver's seat, watching my house, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me, she smiled and waved. My house key wouldn't turn in the lock. She changed it again. Maya got out of her car and walked toward me, still smiling. Locked out? That's annoying. Good thing I have a spare. She produced a key I'd never seen before and opened my front door like she owned the place. We need to talk. she said, stepping inside. I followed her, knowing I had no choice. In my own living room, surrounded by my own furniture, I felt like a visitor in someone else's space. "You've been having a tough day," Maya said, settling onto my couch. "All that running around, talking to police officers who think you're crazy. It must be exhausting." What happened in those next few moments will stay with me forever. Maya pulled out her phone and showed me a live video feed of my apartment. Multiple angles, including one that showed both of us sitting in my living room right now. "I've been watching you for so long, Jess. Learning everything about you. You're so much more interesting than the others." "What others?" Sarah was too trusting. Jennifer was too independent. "Melissa." She shrugged. "Melissa was perfect, but she tried to run. You can't run from someone who knows you better than you know yourself." I stood up, but Maya held up her phone again. Now it showed a different video. Me at the police station an hour ago, talking to the desk officer. "I have cameras everywhere you go, Jess. Your office, your gym, your favorite coffee shop. I know everyone you talk to, everything you do. If you try to run like Melissa did, well, accidents happen on dark roads." The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. Maya wasn't just watching me. She had turned my entire world into a surveillance network, and I was trapped at the center of it. "What do you want?" "I want what I've always wanted. To take care of you. To make sure you're safe. To be the most important person in your life." Her smile was warm and loving and completely terrifying. "The others never understood that, but you will. You're smarter than they were." Outside, rain began to fall against the windows, and I realized that no matter where I went, Maya would be watching. I had seconds to decide, and my choice would determine everything. But as I looked at her sitting on my couch, phone in hand, controlling every aspect of my existence with technology one couldn't escape, I understood the truth. I'd already made my choice the moment I'd walked back into my own house. The rain sounds just like static from hidden microphones. "You seemed upset on Tuesday around 3:47 p.m., Rachel said, her pen moving steadily across the page of her leather notebook. "Your shoulders were tense when you got that phone call." I looked up from my coffee, confused. "What phone call?" "The one that made you pace around your kitchen for 12 minutes. You bit your lower lip afterward. You always do that when you're anxious." She glanced up from her writing with a bright smile. "Want to talk about it?" The thing was, I had gotten an upsetting call Tuesday afternoon. My landlord threatening to raise my rent. But I'd been alone in my apartment when it happened, and I hadn't mentioned it to anyone. "How do you know about that?" Rachel's pen paused. "You told me, remember? Yesterday at lunch?" But we hadn't had lunch yesterday. Rachel had cancelled, saying she was sick. "I think you're confused," I said carefully. "Am I?" She flipped back a few pages in her notebook, scanning the entries. "No, here it is. Wednesday, 12:30 p.m., Corner Cafe. You ordered the turkey sandwich, extra pickles. You told me about the landlord situation and how it was affecting your sleep patterns." I stared at her neat handwriting, the precise timestamps, the detailed observations written in her careful script. None of it had happened. "Rachel, we didn't have lunch yesterday." She looked at me with the patient expression of someone dealing with a forgetful child. "Of course we did, Megan. I have it written right here." The notebook snapped shut before I could read more. That evening, I called my sister. "Do you think it's weird that Rachel writes everything down?" "You mean like a diary?" "No, like observations. About me. About what I do and say and how I act." Amy was quiet for a moment. "That does sound a little intense. How long has she been doing this?" I realized I didn't know. Rachel and I had been friends for about a year, ever since she'd moved to town for work. She'd always carried that leather notebook, always been attentive to details, always remembered things about our conversations with startling accuracy. I thought she was just a good listener. "Maybe she's a writer," Amy suggested. "Some people document everything for inspiration." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the notebook. The way Rachel's eyes followed me when we were together, like she was cataloging every gesture. The way she remembered conversations I'd forgotten, complete with exact quotes and timestamps. The way she'd written about a lunch that never happened. Friday afternoon, Rachel texted asking if I wanted to grab dinner. I suggested a new restaurant across town, somewhere we'd never been together. She agreed immediately, which should have been my first warning. When I arrived, she was already seated at a corner table, notebook open beside her plate. As I approached, I caught a glimpse of the page. Friday, 6:15 p.m. Megan arrives wearing blue sweater, same one from October 12th, indicates comfort-seeking behavior. Appears nervous, checking phone repeatedly. Chose table with view of exit, defensive positioning consistent with previous behavioral patterns. I slid into the booth across from her, my skin crawling. What are you writing? Just notes about my day. She closed the notebook casually. You look great. That sweater brings out your eyes. You're writing about me. What? She laughed, but it sounded forced. Don't be paranoid, Meg. Not everything is about you. But I'd seen my name on the page. I'd seen the timestamps, the clinical observations about my behavior written like I was a specimen under a microscope. Can I see your notebook? Why would you want to see that? It's just boring personal stuff. If it's boring, then why can't I see it? Her grip tightened on the leather cover. Because it's private, Megan. Would you want me reading your diary? I didn't have a diary. But apparently, Rachel was keeping one for me. Dinner was tense, conversation stilted. Every time I moved or spoke, I caught Rachel's eyes tracking the motion, like she was filing it away for later documentation. When I excused myself to the bathroom, I saw her pull out her phone and start typing rapidly. What I discovered next made me question everything I thought I knew about our friendship. That night, I created a fake social media account and searched for Rachel's name. Her real profiles were locked down tight, but eventually I found something else, a blog called Case Study M, with no author name attached. The first entry was dated exactly 1 year ago, 3 days after we'd first met. Subject exhibits classic extroverted masking behaviors to compensate for underlying anxiety disorder. Initial contact established through manufactured coffee shop encounter. Subject responded positively to friendly overtures, suggesting potential for long-term observational study. My hands shook as I scrolled through months of entries. Rachel had been documenting my life in excruciating detail, analyzing my relationships, my work stress, my family dynamics like I was a psychology experiment. She'd recorded conversations I'd forgotten, mapped my daily routines, even tracked my menstrual cycle based on mood observations. She knew my sleep schedule, my eating habits, my deepest fears and insecurities, all catalogued with the detached precision of a researcher studying a lab rat. But the worst entries were the ones about manipulation. Introduced topic of subject's strained relationship with mother during vulnerable moment. Subject responded as predicted, seeking comfort and validation. Emotional dependency successfully reinforced. Arranged cancellation of subject's plans with college friend through strategic information sharing. Subject now relies more heavily on me for social interaction. Suggested subject avoid dating app encounters by highlighting negative outcomes. Subject's romantic isolation increases my influence as primary emotional support. Rachel hadn't just been watching my life. She'd been steering it, manipulating my decisions and relationships to make me more dependent on her friendship. Every piece of advice, every supportive comment, every shoulder to cry on, all calculated moves in some twisted social experiment. The most recent entry made my blood freeze. Subject beginning to show awareness of observational protocols. May need to accelerate timeline for Phase 2 implementation. Relocation and isolation procedures should commence within 2 to 3 weeks to maintain study integrity. I screenshot everything, saved it to multiple cloud accounts, then spent the rest of the night researching. What I found terrified me even more. The truth behind Rachel's friendship was so much worse than I could have imagined. There were court records from her previous city. A restraining order filed by a woman named Jessica Chin, claiming Rachel had stalked her for over 2 years, documenting her life obsessively and attempting to control her social connections. The case had been dismissed due to insufficient evidence, but Jessica's statement was chilling. She made me feel like I was going crazy. She knew things about me that I'd never told anyone, remembered conversations differently than they'd actually happened. She convinced everyone I was paranoid while systematically isolating me from friends and family. There were similar complaints from other cities, other women, all dismissed as personality conflicts or mutual misunderstandings. Rachel had been doing this for years, perfecting her technique, moving from place to place when her subjects became too aware or too resistant. I was just her latest case study. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Hey! Want to take a spontaneous weekend trip? I found this great cabin rental in the mountains. Just you and me, like a digital detox." A digital detox. Away from cell towers and Wi-Fi. Somewhere isolated where she could implement whatever Phase 2 meant without interruption. I texted back. "Sounds fun. Send me the details." But instead of waiting for her response, I drove straight to the police station. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic but skeptical. "So your friend keeps detailed notes about your conversations? She's been manipulating my life based on psychological analysis. She's done this before to other women. But has she threatened you? Broken any laws?" "She's stalking me. Being observant isn't illegal, ma'am. And if you've been voluntarily spending time together..." I showed him the blog posts, the entries about manipulation and isolation. He read through them with growing concern, but ultimately shook his head. "This is unsettling, but without direct threats or evidence of criminal activity, there's not much we can do. Have you considered simply ending the friendship?" That's when I realized how perfectly Rachel had constructed her trap. Everything she'd done existed in legal gray areas. Detailed observation, strategic conversation, social manipulation, none of it was technically illegal. And if I tried to warn others or expose her behavior, who would believe that someone's crime was being too good a friend? The final piece of the puzzle changed everything, and there was no going back. I drove home to find Rachel's car in my driveway. She was sitting on my front steps, notebook in her lap, writing furiously. When she saw me, she looked up with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, analytical, completely devoid of the warmth I'd associated with our friendship. "You've been busy tonight," she said, still writing. "Police station, internet research, very predictable defensive behaviors. Subject exhibits paranoid ideation when confronted with reality of observational study." "Rachel, what are you doing?" "Finishing my research." She held up the notebook. "Did you know you've said my name 847 times in the past year? You laugh exactly 23% more when you're nervous, and you touch your neck when you're lying. Fascinating patterns, really." I backed toward my car, but she stood up, blocking my path. "The cabin trip is still on, Megan. We have so much more to explore together. You've been the most responsive subject yet. I'm not your subject." "Of course you are. You have been since the moment I chose you." She smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen. "Did you really think our meeting was coincidence? I'd been watching you for weeks before I approached you at that coffee shop. What happened in those next few moments will stay with me forever." Rachel opened her notebook to the very first page, and I saw my own photograph paper-clipped to the inside cover. Not a casual snapshot, but a surveillance photo taken with a telephoto lens. Below it, in her neat handwriting, "Subject selection, Megan Patricia Wells. Age 28, recently relocated, minimal local social connections. Ideal candidate for extended observational study." She targeted me from the beginning. Everything I'd thought was genuine friendship had been a carefully orchestrated experiment, and I was nothing more than data to be collected and analyzed. "You're insane," I whispered. "I'm thorough," she corrected, still writing. "And you're going to help me complete the most comprehensive behavioral study ever conducted. Think of how much we'll learn together." I ran for my car, keys fumbling and shaking hands. Rachel didn't chase me, she just stood there writing, documenting my panic response with the same clinical detachment she'd shown for everything else. As I drove away, I saw her in my rearview mirror, still taking notes under the streetlight. I had seconds to decide, and my choice would determine everything. But I realized that no matter where I went, Rachel would be watching, documenting, adding new entries to her endless study of my life. She'd learned everything about me, mapped my patterns, predicted my responses. I was trapped in someone else's research project, and the observer had become my entire world. The rain sounds just like pages turning. I saw you at CVS yesterday, Kevin said, appearing beside me in the grocery store checkout line like he'd materialized from thin air. Around 3:30. You bought allergy medicine and, what was that other thing? Something in a small box. I gripped my shopping basket tighter, the plastic handle cutting into my palm. I wasn't at CVS yesterday. Sure you were. You parked in the third spot from the entrance, wore that green jacket with the broken zipper. He smiled, that easy, familiar smile that had made us friends in college. You looked congested. Hope you're feeling better. The thing was, I had been at CVS yesterday. I'd bought Claritin and pregnancy tests, but I'd driven 20 minutes across town specifically to avoid running into anyone I knew. There was no way Kevin could have seen me there by coincidence. How do you know about my jacket zipper? You mentioned it last week, remember? When we had coffee? But we hadn't had coffee last week. Kevin had been calling and texting, trying to make plans, but I'd been putting him off. Ever since I'd started dating Tom, Kevin had become intense, needy, always wanting to hang out, always showing up places I went. I think you're confusing me with someone else, I said, moving forward in line. No, definitely you. I'd recognize that walk anywhere. His laugh sounded forced. You do this little thing where you favor your left foot when you're in a hurry. I didn't know I did that. I'd never noticed it myself. That evening I called my sister Emma while making dinner. I think Kevin might be following me. Following you how? He keeps showing up places I go. He knows details about my day that I never told him. I stirred pasta sauce with one hand, phone pressed to my ear with the other. Today he described my exact outfit from yesterday, down to a broken zipper I forgot I had. Maybe he just notices things. Some people are really observant. He knew what time I was at a store 20 minutes from his apartment. On a Tuesday afternoon when he should have been at work. The line went quiet. That is weird. Have you talked to Tom about it? I hadn't. Tom and Kevin had never gotten along, some testosterone thing that started the first time they met. If I told Tom that Kevin was following me, it would just create more drama. I'm probably overreacting, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I didn't believe them. The next few days, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Kevin texted me Tuesday morning asking if I was okay because I seemed off lately. I'd been home alone all morning, hadn't seen or talked to anyone. Wednesday, he mentioned that my car needed an oil change because he noticed the sticker on my windshield was overdue. But that sticker was only visible if you were standing directly in front of my car, close enough to peer through the glass. Thursday, he called while I was at work and asked if I'd gotten the flowers I ordered for my grandmother's grave. I'd made that trip during my lunch break to a cemetery 30 miles away. I told no one about it. Friday evening, I decided to test him. I told Kevin I was staying in to do laundry and catch up on Netflix. Instead, I drove to a bookstore in the next town over, somewhere I'd never been before. I parked behind the building, used the back entrance, paid with cash. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Kevin, how's the bookstore? Find anything good? My hands started shaking so hard I could barely type back. Me. What bookstore? I'm at home doing laundry. Kevin. Sorry, autocorrect. I meant book you're reading. How's the book you're reading? But I had screenshots. I always screenshot things that make me uncomfortable now. Kevin had definitely written bookstore. What I discovered next made me question everything I thought I knew about our friendship. I drove home taking a deliberately random route, checking my rearview mirror constantly. No sign of Kevin's distinctive blue Honda, but that didn't mean anything. Maybe he'd switched cars. Maybe he was tracking me some other way. At home, I started searching. Really searching. My car first. I found the GPS tracker stuck to the underside of my bumper, small and black and completely invisible unless you knew where to look. It was the kind you could buy online for $50, marketed to parents who wanted to monitor their teenage drivers. The magnetic attachment was still warm. I peeled it off with trembling fingers and examined it under my kitchen light. There was an inscription on the back. KNA Forever. Kevin and Angela. That was the name of his ex-girlfriend from college, the one who'd broken up with him senior year. The one who'd gotten a restraining order against him before graduation. I'd never known about the restraining order. I called Angela. It took 3 tries to find her number through mutual friends, and when I finally reached her, her voice went cold the moment I mentioned Kevin's name. Why are you asking about him? Are you okay? He's been following me. I found a tracking device on my car. Angela was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, how long has this been going on? A few weeks, maybe longer. He always seems to know where I've been, what I'm doing. Listen to me very carefully, Angela said, her voice sharp with urgency. Kevin doesn't just follow people. He studies them. He learns their routines, their habits, their vulnerabilities. Then he uses that information to insert himself into their lives until they can't function without him. What do you mean? He'll start small. Showing up places you go, knowing things he shouldn't know. Then he'll escalate. He'll sabotage your other relationships, create emergencies that make you depend on him, isolate you from friends and family. Her voice cracked. By the time I realized what was happening, he'd convinced everyone that I was the unstable one. The truth behind Kevin's behavior was so much worse than I could have imagined. Angela told me everything. How Kevin had started as a supportive friend during her difficult senior year. How he'd gradually become the only person she could talk to about her problems. How her other friendships had mysteriously deteriorated. People getting angry about things she supposedly said, boyfriends breaking up with her over rumors they wouldn't explain. He made himself indispensable, she said. Every crisis in my life, Kevin was there to help. I didn't realize he was creating the crises himself. Kevin had spread rumors about Angela's mental health, convinced her friends she was becoming unstable, even sabotaged her job interviews to keep her dependent on his support. When she finally figured out what he was doing and tried to cut contact, he'd escalated to breaking into her apartment, leaving gifts in places only he could have accessed, following her to work and social events. The restraining order was the only thing that stopped him, Angela said. But even then, it took months before I felt safe again. He has this way of making you feel like you're going crazy, like everything bad in your life is just coincidence. I thought about all the little things that had gone wrong lately. The fight with my best friend Sarah over something I supposedly said about her boyfriend, except I'd never said it. The miscommunication with Tom about dinner plans that had led to our biggest argument yet. The mix-up at work that had cost me a promotion. All of it had Kevin's fingerprints on it, now that I knew what to look for. What should I do? I asked. Get evidence. Document everything. And whatever you do, don't let him know that you know. Kevin is dangerous when he feels cornered. That night, I went through my phone, my social media, my email. What I found made my stomach turn. The final piece of the puzzle changed everything, and there was no going back. Kevin had access to everything. My social media accounts showed login attempts from IP addresses I didn't recognize. My cloud storage had been accessed from devices I'd never owned. Even my work email had been compromised, which explained how he'd known about my schedule changes and personal conversations. But the worst discovery was in my apartment itself. I found the first listening device behind my bedroom mirror, disguised as a screw head. The second was in my smoke detector. The third was built into a phone charger he'd given me for Christmas, one I'd been using every night by my bed. Kevin hadn't just been following me. He'd been living in my private space, listening to my phone calls, my conversations with Tom, even the sounds of me sleeping. For months. My phone rang. Kevin. I stared at it, knowing that if I didn't answer, he'd know something was wrong. If I did answer, I'd have to pretend everything was normal while knowing he was monitoring my every word. Hey, Kev, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Hi, Anna. You sound tired. Everything okay? How could he know how I sounded unless he was listening right now? Just a long day. Work stuff. That presentation you're worried about. You'll do great. You always overthink these things. I hadn't told him about any presentation. I'd only discussed it with Tom, here in my apartment, last night. Thanks. I managed. Want to grab dinner tomorrow? That new place downtown? I could pick you up around 7. The casual assumption that I'd be available, that he'd be welcome in my space, that he had any right to plan my time, it all felt suffocating now. I'll let you know, I said. Sure thing. Sleep well, Anna. Sweet dreams. The line went dead, and I realized I was sitting in darkness. When had I turned off the lights? How long had Kevin been listening to me discover his surveillance equipment? What happened in those next few moments will stay with me forever. My front door lock clicked. I hadn't heard a key, hadn't heard footsteps. Just the soft sound of my deadbolt turning, the whisper of hinges as my door opened. Anna? Kevin's voice drifted through the apartment. Your car's here, but you didn't answer when I knocked. I got worried. I was trapped in my bedroom, listening devices all around me, GPS tracker probably already replaced on my car. Kevin had keys to my apartment. Kevin had been inside my private space whenever he wanted. Just checking on you, he called, footsteps moving through my living room. Making sure you're safe. I heard him pause outside my bedroom door. I know you're awake, Anna. Your breathing pattern changes when you're pretending to sleep. The doorknob turned slowly. In the darkness, I could see Kevin's silhouette backlit by the hallway light. He stood there for a long moment, just watching me lie motionless in bed. I've been taking such good care of you, he whispered. Making sure nothing bad happens. Making sure you don't make mistakes with the wrong people. He stepped into the room. But you've been talking to people you shouldn't talk to. Learning things you don't need to know. I had seconds to decide, and my choice would determine everything. But as Kevin moved closer to my bed, I understood the horrible truth. There was no choice. There never had been. Kevin had been controlling every aspect of my life for so long that even my decisions weren't really mine anymore. He'd been writing my story from the beginning, and I was just a character he'd created. Don't worry, he said, settling into the chair beside my bed like he belonged there. I'll take care of everything. Just like I always do. Outside, rain began to fall, and I realized the sound would cover any noise from inside my apartment. The observer had become the observed, and now there was no way out. Kevin reaches for my hand in the darkness. Thanks so much for watching. I can't express enough how much your support means. The likes, the comments, it all really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I always take the time to read them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on any new videos. See you next time.